Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. It's been a while since I've offered any content up, so today I will be sharing a presentation that I did with the Albuquerque Astronomy Society. They also gave me this awesome hat that I got for doing the presentation. So basically the presentation is a breakdown of using the ASIAir Pro and Plus and how I've been doing astrophotography for the better part of a year and a half. Basically, it's a deep dive into the software and as deep as I could get, actually, for a 45-minute presentation. I also show off the software and kind of give pros and cons to using a PC and using the ASIAir Pro and Plus and the benefits of it. So without further ado, here's the presentation.
Thank you, Jim, and everybody, welcome again to our general meeting. Tonight we have our very own Joy Troy, who's going to speak to us about something really cool. If you're an avid aspirational astrophotographer, he's going to talk to us about simplifying astrophotography and talking about some very cool units called the ZWO ASIair Pro. It's some computer units that apparently will really help you out with your astrophotography. Joey is a network systems administrator supporting a Sandia Lab federal credit union. He's got 25 years of experience working in IT, with experience supporting networks, phone systems, servers. He's also the CEO and owner of Black Mirror Studio LLC. He sells his product, Chess Note R, which is certified with the United States Chess Federation, allowing chess players to rotate chess during tournament play. Wow. He's currently serving as a GNTO committee member, and he's working toward his Foundations of Imaging Observing program with the Astronomical League. When he's not capturing the stars, he spends time with his son, wife, and his dog, Kayla. So without further ado, Joey, take it over. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. And then if you want to just let me share my screen, that would be awesome.
You can
share. I just submit that? Okay,
you're all set. You're all set to share.
All right. Awesome. Everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. All the images that I have in the slide deck are images I've taken with my astrophotography rig. About me, which has already kind of been spoken about, network systems administrator. I'm the owner and CEO of Black Mirror Studio, not to be confused with Netflix Black Mirror. I actually came up with the name before Netflix started showing the show. So I've got over 1,100 customers worldwide, currently working with FIDE, which is the International Chess Federation, to certify my product. And basically it's just for notating chess. So when you play tournament chess, instead of handwriting, you can notate it, but that's besides that. When COVID hit, chess died, no more over the board playing chess. So I turned to the skies, and NEOWISE was the big thing, and everybody was talking about it. And I went out to go order a telescope, which wasn't available because everybody was buying telescopes. So I finally got my telescope in right after NEOWISE vanished and we couldn't see it anymore. So I wasn't able to enjoy that. And after I purchased the telescope, I was really excited about I wanted to put a camera on and start sharing what I was seeing through the telescope with others. I had an old Olympus C5060 camera and essentially started imaging with that. And shortly after, I ended up purchasing my first DSLR Nikon and started learning a lot more about astrophotography, and picked up a lot of stuff online on cloudy nights, reading the forums, and just spending hours with my free time during COVID learning about astrophotography. I went on to go build my first barn door because I really wanted to go back to like how all the previous generations were learning how to do astrophotography, and I built a barn door, which is basically a contraption that you crank and it opens up, and basically you crank it 360 degrees in a minute to rotate with the Earth as the Earth is spinning, to start taking long exposures. And I was using my DSLR. I had my phone in my lap and I was cranking and holding down my Nikon release kit so I could take the pictures and started creating my first stacks. And then I connected it to my telescope and just continued to grow and progress. So to get started, we're going to talk about ZWO and basically what is ZWO. It's basically a world-renowned company focusing on the development and improving products of astrophotography. Sam Wen created the company in November of 2011. And the whole reason he started it is because there was no cameras on the market for doing planetary imaging. So essentially Sam started the company and built his first camera in December of 2011. And ZWO has grown exponentially in terms of products that they offer for astrophotographers. And I'll explain more of that as we continue on with the slide deck. What we're talking tonight about is the ASIair Pro, and I also mentioned the Plus. The Plus is their new model that they just came out, and it's a really small unit. Hopefully, there we go. It fits in your hand literally. It's very small, very thin, and that's essentially the ASIair Plus. What's really cool about these units is they're basically Raspberry Pis. So if anybody knows anything about computers, it's a Raspberry Pi, and it's running essentially Raspbian, which is basically the operating system for it. So it's like a low-level Linux operating system. ZWO has basically taken open source software using INDI software and essentially compiled it into the operating system. INDI is an open source project that's run by thousands of people all over the world that basically help do astronomy and astrophotography to basically control all the different parts of your astro rig. This is going to be your camera, your focuser, your electronic autofocuser. It can be stuff like weather, domes. There's tons of stuff and tons of plugins that are involved with INDI. So basically, that's what they're using in the back end. And then they've also leaned on PhD2 for anybody that's done astrophotography. That's how you do guiding. So as the Earth continues to rotate, you use PhD2 to find a guide star and essentially guide as the Earth is turning, so you continue to do long exposures. These units are very slick. They don't take a lot of energy or power. That's what's also really nice about them, especially if you go out to the GNTO, there is no power, so you have to use a battery source. So they use very little power. Essentially, I have information here. They have a very low-end processor, 4 gigs of RAM, 32 gig operating system. The nice thing about them is they have power ports on them, so you can connect all your different parts of your astro rig. It could be your mount, also connect your autofocuser, your filter wheel, your camera, different things that may need power. The problem with the very first unit with the ASIair Pro is that it didn't have very good Wi-Fi. As you have seen there, it's about 7 to 10 feet away from the device. That you can basically connect to the unit to control it. We'll get into that as we continue forward. The ASIair Plus, which just came out in the tail end of 2022 or 2021, excuse me, is essentially, it can handle up to 65 feet of Wi-Fi connectivity. People that had the original Pro unit were really frustrated just because the Wi-Fi wasn't far enough, and so you had to purchase like a Wi-Fi extender to get longer connectivity with that. So that's basically the hardware that's we're going to be talking about tonight. So what do you need with the ASIair Pro and Plus? Basically, you need a tablet to control your mount and your camera and to be able to take pictures. You can use either Android or iOS. You can also get away with using like a Windows laptop and install BlueStack. BlueStack will allow you to run and emulate Android operating system on there. And later, I think this year, Microsoft is supposed to also be supporting Android natively inside the operating system. So you could also use Windows 11 to control it through like a laptop or a tablet or running Microsoft Windows. You'll also need a DSLR camera. ZWO only supports Nikon's and also Canon cameras. Unfortunately, they don't support any Sony sensors. I think the reason why is because when you get into their ZW Astro cameras, the ZWO Astro cameras, excuse me, support Sony sensors. The other thing you'll need is a telescope. or a camera lens to connect to your camera. You can use either or. And the other thing is an equatorial mount to use, which is basically go-to. You can get away with using stuff like a SkyGuider Pro and other mounts that will allow you to do basically long exposures. I used a SkyGuider Pro when it first started, and it was I had difficulty with it, and I ended up returning it to the company, and then I ended up buying an equatorial mount when I first started getting into astrophotography and starting to do long exposures. ZWO offers a lot of their own hardware as you continue to grow in the hobby and start doing astrophotography. They offer guide scope and off-axis guiders. They also offer guide cameras. They have different models that they have, and as you go up in those numbers, as you'll see, there's like a 120, 174, and a 290. As you continue to grow in the numbers, the more sensitive those cameras are, and the better they are for guiding. But you can definitely guide with a 120 camera. The guiding again is going to be as you're moving, as the Earth is moving. Essentially, you're going to be able to guide with those cameras. So you need a special camera just for guiding. ZWO also offers DSO cooled cameras. They offer mono and one-shot color cameras that you can purchase from them, which allow for cooling. They also have some cameras that don't offer cooling as well, which is going to be your planetary cameras, which you can use as well for DSOs as well for deep space objects. They also offer a focuser, so you can basically focus your telescope so you don't have to be out there focusing all night long. When I first started learning how to do all this, there's basically something that you put on top of your telescope called a batten-off mask, which basically has like these really strange lines on it so that you can create stars with X's in them so you know that you're focusing. It makes it extremely difficult when you're doing astrophotography to have to focus multiple times throughout the night. As the temperature drops, especially in the colder months, you'd have to be out there focusing it and messing with it. So adding an electronic autofocuser makes shooting the stars extremely easy. It's like way too easy. And I love easy. So they also offer filters if you do mono. They offer LRGB, which is luminance, red, green, and blue. And then also they offer HSO, which is your hydrogen alpha, your sulfur, and your oxygen filters. And they offer those in different sizes. They also offer a manual filter wheel. So if you want to go out there and change the filter as you're taking pictures, you can rotate the filter, or you can upgrade to their electronic filter wheels, which will automatically rotate the filter as you go through your pictures and you're taking your different pictures. So if you have a mono camera and you want to take a color picture, you have to shoot luminance, which is your L filter, and then red, green, and blue to basically you take all those images and you basically stack them together to create a final product, which is like something behind me that I have that was done with the SHO, which the sulfur, hydrogen alpha, and oxygen. The other thing that they're going to be coming out with in April is their first mount. So they are now creating mounts so that you can basically hook it up, and it's their own equatorial mount, and you can either get a tripod for it or you can set it up in other ways. I forget the name of what we have out at the site, but basically at the GNTO, we basically have the poles that you can mount put your mount on and basically run. So what's the ZWO ASIAir do? So for those of you that don't know astrophotography, there's a lot of work that goes into doing astrophotography. You have to set up your mount. You have to put your camera and your telescope. You have to get all your different things. And basically, the first thing you do is you polar align. So you have to find Polaris and do a polar align. In the newest version that ZWO came out with, because they constantly update the software, it allows you now to basically be able to polar align without any polar alignment. So if you can't see Polaris, or you can't see the southern star to basically polar align, you can just polar align based on the stars. You can do deep space object imaging, planetary imaging. The ZWO, the little, again, the ASIAir Pro will control your mount, so you can go to objects. It'll plate solve objects. So with your camera, it'll take a picture of what object you're going to. So like if you want to go to Orion, it'll find Orion in the sky, it'll take a picture, and then it'll center the telescope and get everything set up so you can take images. It'll do autofocusing for you. If you have an electronic autofocuser, it'll do multi-star guiding, which is part of PhD2 software. So essentially, it'll find multiple stars and guide along those stars. So you get better guiding. When you have issues with your guiding, you'll get jitters and you'll get star trails, and it's just you spend a lot of time if you don't have good guiding, trying to take long exposures. It'll do dithering, and what that is when the telescope is moving, after it takes a picture, it'll move a little bit to the left or to the right or up or down based on pixels, and allow you to basically move the hot pixels on your camera to different angles. So like when you stack all these pictures together, if you've got like a hot pixel, it'll move it to different areas so that it'll help clean up noise when you're creating all these images after you take all these pictures. It'll allow you to do binning, which allows you to basically push more pixels into a certain area so you can get more detail into pictures. You can do live stacking, which is basically EAA, which is electronic assisted astronomy. So essentially you can go to an object and it'll automatically start stacking all your images live in real time. And as you stack more of those images, you'll get a better picture, so that you can like show it on a TV set or on a monitor. So like when we do live events, this device would really make it easy to be able to share the stars with individuals that we can't see stuff with our normal naked eye that we can only see with cameras in long exposures. You can do a planning mode. So through the night, as objects are rising in the horizon and going higher where you want to shoot images or shoot these objects as they go higher in the horizon, you can set up a planning mode based on that. So, you know, if Orion's going up high in the sky, you can set it up to plan to shoot for it. And then, you know, or Andromeda's coming down, you can shoot low as Andromeda before it hits below the horizon. You can also do mosaic mode, so it'll allow you to do a huge area within space that you can take pictures in. It'll do meridian flips, and it'll just continue to, it's got a lot of features in it, and there's so much to go into with the software that 45 minutes is nowhere near enough time to really explain all this. So what I've done is I've created a really short demo. It's about 4.5 minutes, which I'll walk through and just kind of show you the ASIAir in action. Basically, I had it hooked up to my iPad, and I was just recording from my iPad, which is then connected to my mount through Wi-Fi. So it all connects through the ASIAir with my iPad, which connects to this, which then connects everything in. Again, it's got USB cables and all my different things go in here, my camera, my electronic autofocuser, my electronic filter wheel, et cetera, all go into the ports. And then I have power, which runs my camera, all from this little device. So we'll go ahead and start with this. So essentially in here, I'm just on my iPad and I'm starting up the ASIAir software. When you start up the ASIAir software, it'll come up and essentially allow you to set your mount, the type of mount that you have. So I'm using a GEM 28, and then you put in your focal length for your telescope and also your guide scope. Because I use an off-axis guider on my telescope, and I'll have a picture later and I can show you that. Essentially, it's the same focal length. You set your camera in your guide camera, and then in this case, I have my electronic my electronic filter wheel, and then my electronic autofocuser. So that's basically that. So once you have everything set, you just hit the enter button and it takes you to the main screen. So here's the main screen, and essentially this is where you control all your devices, so you can basically start capturing the heavens above and become this amazing astrophotographer, or at least hope you do. So in here, when I get started, the first thing I'll do is when I go outside, I'll set up my mount and have everything set up, and I'll try to point to Polaris as closely as possible. And then when you go in here, you can just click on the menu. I go in here first, and I actually set my guide camera. I turn that on to do bin 2 on my guide camera, so I get better guiding. That's a new feature that they added in, I think, the last update or the update before, which is allowing for better guiding, which is really nice. The next thing I do is I'll go over and I'll start my polar alignment. So basically, I'll speed this up, but what it's doing is it'll take a picture of Polaris with the camera and find NCP, which is the North Celestial Pole. And then essentially at that point, once it takes that picture, it's going to find all the stars and it's going to do a plate solve. And what plate solving is that when it takes a picture, it's going to know exactly where it is in the sky based on all the stars that it's seeing. So essentially, once it takes that picture, it'll say that it found like 543 stars. And then it said it plate solved, and I hit the next button, and then it'll move my amount. And then I can basically start doing a polar line. So I speed this up a little bit because it takes a while. So here I'm basically messing with my right ascension and my declination and trying to adjust everything and get it as close to the center as possible. I like to get it as close as possible just because you'll have less guiding errors. So here you can see I'm at 32 arc seconds. We won't go into arc seconds because I don't want to, it's already complex enough as it is just talking about astrophotography, but basically the lower the number, the better for your guiding. We'll go ahead and continue on here. So it says great. And it took me 7 minutes. So it says like riding a bicycle, a bit slow. So usually if I don't polar line as close as I did, then I usually can do it in about 2 or 3 minutes with the software, which is really nice. The next thing you do is you go to the preview mode, and then in the preview mode, you can go to objects. In here, up at the top, you can actually search for objects with the little search button at the top, and you can search on any star that you want, comets, planetary, deep space objects, you name it, you can search on it. The neat thing about the software is that it'll find the best objects for the night, which you can shoot, and then it'll show a list of them here. So it'll basically show you a list of objects that you can shoot, and it'll list all the different objects that you can get, NGCs and Pleiades and so forth. So basically in here, you can scroll down the list, and it's a little, because I'm using my mouse, because I wanted you to kind of see my movement on my iPad, I'm kind of like I have to drag and scroll instead of using my finger and just swiping really easy. So basically you can go through and you can see all these different objects. And what's really slick is that up here at the top, it's showing you at what level they're going to be at the horizon based on time. So this is going to be picking up my time where I'm at, and it's going to show me like the best time to shoot is when it gets higher in the horizon. So the higher up it is, the better it is to shoot it, because you're going to be up higher, and you're going to be getting away from any kind of atmospheric distortion by going up higher into the atmosphere when you do astrophotography. So I just kind of scrolled through here and just kind of wanted to show you all the different objects, and you can keep scrolling and going and going. It's going to just keep showing you objects all night long that you can shoot. And then, like I said, you can set up a plan and you can shoot multiple objects throughout the night based on where they are. So here I'm going to pick M42, and essentially what happens is when I pick it, it's going to automatically move the mount. So the mount's going to move to where Orion's at, and I'm going to be able to shoot it. So what you'll see here is it's slewing to the target, it's solving, it finds the stars, and then it's going to actually center on Orion. And then it takes a picture, which is out of focus, but it's showing you there's a picture of Orion really quick from the camera. As soon as I went to it and hit the go to it went. So the next thing that I do is I do my focuser, so I can actually get Orion in focus because it's way out of focus. So because I have an electronic autofocuser on my mount, it'll automatically focus my telescope, so I'm completely in focus with the object that I'm shooting. And what it does is it calculates it. So I'll just let it run through here instead of talking about it so you can see it. So it takes a picture and it calculates the star, and then it'll find the star size. And I sped this up because it takes a while to go through this process. So at that point, you can see Orion is in much more focus than it was before, just because the electronic autofocuser does the focusing. So at this point, when you're done, you can go to auto run, and then here's where you can set up your session for what you're going to shoot. So what's really cool is it's got a scheduler, and you can specify, in my case, because I have filters on my telescope, I can specify how long I want to shoot, what my exposure time is going to be, and which filter I want to use. And it'll automatically go through each filter. So I'm just going to go in here and delete what I had and basically configure the images that I'm going to take. So I was going to, because this is a demonstration, I took really short exposures. I was only taking 30 seconds of Orion. So I go through here and I just set the time, 30 seconds, and then I set the next filter, how many times to repeat it, and then I do my red filter and so forth and so on. So basically I'm just setting all my filters up for my luminance, my red and blue and green. So basically, after all my images are done, I can stack them together to create a final image with astrophotography. So again, the software is really nice because it makes it really simplistic. And basically, once you're all done, you just hit the back button, and then I want to set up my guiding now. So here, I'll set up my guiding. I hit a refresh. It sees some stars, and then I just hit I hit the button, and it basically finds a bunch of stars and it circles them, and then it'll start guiding now. So I can guide as the Earth is rotating. I can guide with the stars so that I can keep my object in line with my telescope, and I can take long exposures. So basically it goes through and it clears up, and then once I have all the stability set on the guiding, oh yeah, so real quick. So basically I went into the settings real quick because I wanted to show you all the different, like some of the settings. I don't want to dive too deep into this. Again, I don't want to make it overly technical, but essentially you can go in here and you can set up your dithering so that, again, after you take a picture, so you can move your hot pixels so that when you stack all your images at the end, when you're doing your integration, you can remove more of the noise from your image so your image is cleaner. But you can go in here and you can set your dither settings for how many pixels you want the camera to move, and on the interval is how many frames. So after my third frame, it'll automatically move my telescope just a little bit, up and down just 5 pixels. So it's not moving it a whole lot, it's just moving it enough so that any of the hot pixels that I might have on my camera sensor will move, again, just so the picture's a little more clear. So just kind of let it run through and let the video run. So once this is all set up, basically I just go back to the main page, and then I hit the start button, and it'll automatically start taking pictures. So once it took my first picture, I kind of sped it up, but there's my first picture of Orion that it took, which is only a 30-second sub. So this isn't a whole lot of detail. It's not really pulling deep into the nebula, but it's just giving you an idea of what it looks like for a 30-second image of Orion. And then basically I let it run through, and here's a zoom in of it. So basically I'm doing a pinch to zoom just so you can see the detail that it's pulling through the camera and stuff like that. So you can see a little bit of the nebula. And I don't know how clear it looks on YouTube, probably not the greatest, but that's kind of a breakdown of it. So basically what happens is with my mount, the way that it's set up with the software, so I can stay inside and, sip on my whiskey or my scotch and not have to go outside and freeze my butt off. I get to come inside and it'll do an autofocus. So what's really neat about the autofocusing is as it drops and gets colder outside, it'll automatically refocus for me so that I'm getting a basically more accurate shot as my telescope is cooling down even more. So you can set up the software to basically do an autofocus every time that the filter changes. You can do it as the temperature drops, or you can do it on an interval. So like every hour, I just wanted to just do a refocus. So it's really slick how you can configure the software to really make it really simplistic to be able to take pictures of deep space. So basically at that point, it'll run through, and it took my 60th shot. And then at that point, it basically I had it configured to shut down my mount. So once it's done, what happens is it'll just basically, it goes back to my home position. And then after it goes back to the home position, it'll just shut down. So I think I had that all set up in here when I did the configuration. Yeah, so it went down, and I just shut it off in this case. I just wanted to manually shut it off just to do that in this demonstration. So basically at that point, that's basically the software in a whole. You can configure it to shoot deep space objects, planetary, comets, whatever you want to find out in space that you want to shoot with your rig, based on how long of a telescope that you have and how good of a mount that you have that can handle all that. So that's kind of a breakdown. So let's for the next slide. So this is a picture of Orion that I took. I don't know how good this looks because it's a little stretched out, but this was basically taken at the GNTO. This is an hour and 43 minutes of integration with LRGB that I took out at GNTO, and there's something to be said about being able to go to the GNTO and really go to a dark site and take astrophotography images. I'm fortunate enough to live in Belen, and in Belen we're in about border class 4. In Albuquerque it's more like 6 or 7. So there's a lot more city, a lot more bright lights. So as you get darker, you don't have to take nearly as long integration times to take these pictures. But a lot of the images that I'll shoot will be upwards of 4, 5 hours, even 6 hours worth of integration time to basically create a final image. So when you're out at a dark site, you spend a lot less time imaging just because it's so much darker. So this is basically my setup that I have. This is on the left-hand side is my telescope that I have. Right here is the electronic autofocuser, which is hooked into the focuser on the telescope, which allows me to do the focusing. Up on top, I have my ASIair Plus. This is my off-axis guider, and then this is my astrophotography camera. And then it's sitting upon my mount, which is an Ioptron Gem 28. And then this is my iPad. So as you can see, there's not a whole lot of cables. Everything's very nicely put together, and it's easy to use. On the other side, I have my PC setup, which is a little Nook that I purchased, which is an i5 Nook. And then I have my laptop, which I have to use Windows to do RDP to connect back into the Nook so I can control the mount. It's no different than using the ASIair software with the iPad. It's just the iPad's connecting to the Wi-Fi on the ASIair Plus to basically do the connection. And then here in the back, I don't know if you can see it, but these little antennas that are sticking out are my Wi-Fi access point that I have to create a bridge in my backyard so I can connect to it. There's also cables that I have to hook up into basically the hand controller for the USB connection, which I don't need on the ASIair because the Gem 28 offers Wi-Fi capability. Inside the ASIair, you can actually bridge and connect to another Wi-Fi device. So I can connect to the mount through Wi-Fi, and I can also connect to the mount through Wi-Fi. So it's really nice. So it's one less cable that I have to use. And then essentially there's other cables I have to plug in to get everything running. Fortunately for my setup that I have, I only need one power cable, and luckily the mount that I have has an external power connector for 5 volts that I can connect to my camera. If not, in this setup, I'd have to buy like a Pegasus power converter to basically power up my whole mount. So it gets a lot more complex when you're dealing with a PC in terms of the cables, in terms of basically the setup that you have to have, and it's a little more expensive as well. Basically, in here, I'm going to have a little bit of pros and cons on the setup. Basically, on the ASIair, it's much easier to set up. There's no drivers. You don't have to install any software except on your tablet or your mobile device. You just have to download the ASIair software and connect to the mount. The software is really simplistic. There's not a whole lot of navigation that you have to learn. If you've used a tablet or any software on a tablet or a mobile device, it's very touch and move and integrated. The nice thing about the software is it's got 5 volt power built into the ASIair. So if you have to run different equipment on basically the ASIair, you can connect to it through the power. It takes much less power to run the ASIair. So my whole mount setup running off that battery that I was showing earlier. So I have a Jackery battery down here that's connected. Basically, I'm using 20 to 28 watts of power per hour to run my mount. There's free updates that ZWO releases. They're usually coming out with software updates about every 1 to 3 months. And they're always revamping the software and adding new features and functionality to make it much easier. They're always adding new features. So they take their time with their updates, so they're not bleeding edge. So as I put in here on the cons, it's a slower feature integration. So PhD2, when it first came out for Windows and PC and Mac, it came out with multi-star guiding, which really helped with guiding for astrophotographers, and it allowed guiding to be much more accurate. And it took a while for ZWO to integrate that into their system. It almost took them about 6 or 7 months after PhD originally released it. So that's one of the cons to the ZWO, is it takes longer to basically get those integrations in. One thing is it is cheaper than a Nook. The ZWO ASIair Plus is, I think don't quote me on this, but I think it's like $299. My Nook was about $350, $360 for the Nook to get the PC. So, and then again, I don't have everything with it. So, one of the cons, of course, that a lot of people on the forums will complain about the ZWO is their lack of support for other ZWO equipment and also their camera selection. So they only support the Canon and Nikon DSLRs or ZWO equipment. If you're using other camera sensors like Sony DSLRs, it won't work with unfortunately, it won't work with it. If you're using like QHY cameras, it won't work with it, but it does support a lot of mounts. And basically almost every single mount that's manufactured is supported by ZWO, like the Paramounts, which are really expensive mounts. Those don't work with the ZWO unless you're using like a SynScan hand controller connected to the Paramount. So again, it doesn't have, it doesn't offer everything that you may be looking for, but depending on where you are in astrophotography or if you're trying to just kind of get into it, I think it's a really good starting point just because of the ease of use. On the other side, on the computer, the pros are you can use any astrophotography equipment out there. That's the huge pro about the computer, is that there's nothing that you can't use. Anything that's been designed for astrophotography, if there's any kind of driver, any kind of support, even if there's not, there's probably open source communities that have released software to make those devices work to do astrophotography. There's bleeding edge software, which is a big pro for the computer user. So users that like new features and want new stuff right away, it's bleeding edge. You'll get all the new stuff right away. They're constantly, there's a really huge support in the open source community that helps with a lot of the software to make it better for astrophotography. The nice thing is that when they do that, ZW also takes care of that and adds it slowly into the ASIAir software. The other pro is, of course, you can run it on Windows, Linux, or Mac, so you can use any computer, basically anything to work with the computer. There's many options with the software, which is really nice. There's tons of different software vendors out there that offer software for free. Some of them is paid to basically run your mount and run all your equipment. Some of the cons for the PC is it's really hard to set up. Even as an IT guy, I spent time setting it up, and there's multiple drivers, there's multiple software. For anybody that's done any astrophotography on a Windows box, you have to start off with a piece of software called ASCOM. ASCOM is a driver set that basically allows all the different types of hardware, your focuser, your camera, your mount, all the different things that you can use, domes, weather stations, and stuff like that. There's drivers that you have to install for that. So first you install ASCOM, which basically can control it all. And then you have to download the drivers for every individual piece of hardware that you're using on your telescope. So it adds a lot of complexity. And then you also have to install software to do guiding as well, which is the PhD2 software. What's really nice about the ZWO is that it integrates that PhD2 into their software suite. So you don't have to run that extra application. You just have to go in and configure the guiding and let it kind of go and do its thing. Some of the other downsides to PCs as well is they don't have power ports. So you'd have to go out and buy like a Pegasus box. Eric in our club, he has his own power box that he built himself, and he has 5-volt connectors on it. So if you're, if you're really good with setting up, batteries and soldering and stuff, like, more power to you. That's awesome. I just never wanted to get involved with all that stuff. So to me, it was much more simpler to get a device that basically had everything all in one. The power usage on them is a lot more. So if you are going to a site like the GNTO, which is a dark site, you're going to spend a lot more power and use a lot more power on these setups just because they use more power from the PC. The PC runs a lot more. Then you're also going to need to have power for your laptop and or tablet with a remote desktop that you're connecting in back to your little PC that's running the mount. So there's software updates that you can get from all these vendors. They offer it all. There's some that is paid. There's some vendors that do now pay for their software because astrophotography has blown up during COVID. A lot of these companies are now charging for what was once open source free software because there's so many people downloading it and so many people coming to astrophotography like never before. And again, the other thing is it's more expensive. So that's kind of the pros and cons, in my opinion, as an IT guy, for what it's worth. So that's kind of the breakdown on it. So at this point, I'll open the floor to any questions.
Hey, Joey.
Hey, Richard.
I'd like to know if the ASIAir Plus will handle darks and flats for calibration frames.
Yeah, so that's one thing I didn't really go into, but what's really cool is in the software, basically, when I was going through and showing those settings in the software, you can actually configure to do your flats, your darks, and your lights. And you can do all that and set it up. And basically, just like I was going through the software and showing how to essentially set the frames up. So basically, when I was shooting my lights, I can do the same thing and just choose, I'm going to shoot darks, and you basically put on your telescope lens, the lens cover. And then if you're doing your flats, you can go outside and, put a white t-shirt over the, basically over your telescope and point it at the sun and basically do your flats that way. So it'll do all the exposures that you need for all that and basically generate all those images. And then you can hook up an external USB thumb drive to it. It's also got an SD port in the side over here that you can plug in and basically do like an SD card, and then you can take that out and plug it into your PC to copy over your images after you're done with your runs.
Joey, I've got a question. It's Dan Kradish here.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, so maybe pretty basic, but the autofocus, when you're doing a deep space object that you can't see in real time, how does that autofocus work? I always focus on an object I can see and then move it over to what I'm shooting. But when you're shooting something you can't see, how do you do that?
Yeah, so when you have the autofocuser set up basically on my mount, so if we go back to my mount here, I have the autofocuser right here that's connected directly into the focuser knob on the telescope. So essentially what the ZWO software is doing is it's taking a long exposure of 2 seconds, which is usually enough to get the focus of the stars in the area or the vicinity of the object that you're shooting. And it's going to focus to those stars that are in the vicinity of that object. So if I went to Orion, just say I go to Orion, whatever stars that are brighter than the nebula, that's the nebula in that area, that's where it's going to focus to, is those stars.
Okay, so it's not focusing in real time, it's focusing after it shoots, it takes a couple of pictures.
Yeah, so what'll happen is it'll take the exposure, and then based on that, it's going to see how the stars look, and then it's gonna and I don't know, it's hard to see in that video because it was going so fast. But if I jump back to the video real quick, where's it at? Oh, that's actually a perfect spot right there. So let me just refresh that. I don't think I can stop that. Let me switch the slide real quick. So on here, as you can see, when it takes the picture, it's going to take a picture of the star, and then it's going to see what the star size is. And then based on that, it's going to adjust the focusing. And so as it's focusing, you're going to see like it's going to hit different points based on like how small it's bringing down that focus on the star until it gets to that little red dot, which it's saying that at that point, it got the star down to 4.41 on the star size. And then at that point, that's when it knew it was in focus.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Joey,
Okay,
this is Jim Fordyce. If I can follow on to that, how do you use the autofocuser for filters? Because sometimes when you use a filter, it's really hard to get the autofocuser to work. But without doing that, every time you change the filter, there's a little bit of change in the focal point.
Yeah, so essentially I am changing my focus on every single filter that I'm flipping to, even though all my filters are parafocal, which means, just for anybody else that's listening, that basically all my filters basically should have the same focus point from filter to filter to filter. That's what the parafocal means. And what's happening here is that when it flips to that filter, let's say it's going to HA or it's going to oxygen or sulfur, which is, there's even less stars that you see in those filter types. You can turn up the amount of focus. So in here on that picture, I don't know if it's got it on there or not. On here where it has the exposure over here, how I have it set to 2 seconds. If you're not getting a good focus, you can turn up that exposure time so that it's able to take a longer exposure of the stars where you're at, so you can get a better focus when you're switching those filters. So in that portion of it, as you go to like a sulfur filter where there may not be as much stars because you're bringing it in at such basically you're cutting out so much light when you're using that sulfur filter that you don't see those stars. That's when you can just set that exposure to be longer.
And you found that to work reasonably well?
Yeah, I haven't had any problems at all. So
Okay.
Just example. I mean, here's a good example of a picture that I took with basically the hydrogen, alpha, oxygen, and sulfur for the Rosette Nebula. And as you can see, all the stars are perfect focus. So, and it's the same picture that's behind me and stuff like that. Again, I don't know how well this looks on on the slide deck because I have a large screen, so I don't know if it's looking great on Zoom. But if you go to my website, which I'll have a link at the end, you can go to my AstroBand account and you can see just the pictures that I've taken. And I've taken both LRGB, one-shot color, and also different filters with the hydrogen, alpha, sulfur, and oxygen.
Great. One other point, I've been using the ZWO, the ASIairs for both a Pro and a Plus for EAA setup, and found that works really well. But one of the issues that I had was that they only provide you software to control the ASIair that runs on either an iPad or an Android tablet.
Right.
But what I found was something called BlueStacks,
right,
which runs on under Windows. And so basically you load the Android version of the software into BlueStacks and then run that on your laptop, and then you can put it on whatever screen you want to whatever size you want. And that's worked really well for me. So hopefully in the future, they'll just be able to run directly under Windows. And that is a project that apparently is moving along. But for now, BlueStacks really solves the problem.
Yeah, definitely. For users that like to use a laptop and stuff like that, it's definitely nice.
Joey, another question.
Yeah.
Can you use the tablet? Can you use an Amazon Fire tablet with the Android software?
The Android.
Because Fire. The Fire is kind of a bastardized.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so the Fire may or may not work. I know with some of the Fires, there's a way to root those devices and essentially sideload Android onto them, like basically allowing you to install the Play Store. And then once you get the Play Store, then you can download it. You would have to check in the Amazon library, but I don't believe the Fire has the ability to download ASIair, the software from the Amazon store, if you will. But there is ways to root some of those Fires, and basically you can basically install the Play Store so you can download all the apps for Android.
Yeah, I've been able to do that on my Fire.
Yeah. So, but I'm not sure. I don't know if ZWO offers it. As far as I know, they're only offering it in the Play Store and the Apple Store, or the store for Android or iOS devices.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Well, thank you, Joey.
Definitely.
That was very informative.
Yeah.
And wow.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. I mean, unfortunately, in 45 minutes, trying to really explain astrophotography in 45 minutes is a little difficult. If you're ever out at the GNTO, I try to go every third quarter and dark a new moon. I'm out there. You're always welcome to come and ask me questions. If you ever want to see the software in action or my mountain in action, you can let me know. I'll usually set up and then I'll just go in the casino and stay warm. So I've got my Wi-Fi controlling everything, and definitely if I'm on the TAAS talk, and you're welcome to email me directly. I have a lot of information on my website. I blog a bunch about it. I also have a YouTube channel as well, and I've done videos showing off the ASIair software back when I used to have the Pro before I got the Plus. So it's not as accurate as it is now because they've made a lot of additions to the software. But for trying to get into astrophotography, I think for anybody new to the hobby and just wanting to get their feet wet, I really feel like as you progress with the hobby, I really feel like the ASIair software makes it extremely easy for those newcomers that are scared about it, or it's like really complex, because they make it really easy as it can. Astrophotography is definitely complex, and there's a lot of moving parts, not to mention the time that it takes to process images. I'll spend, like I said, 4 to 6 hours imaging, and then another 2 to 3 hours processing. So it definitely takes time. It's a lot of fun if you enjoy that kind of stuff. As an IT guy, I needed an outlet because I didn't have chess. So astrophotography it was. So it was fun. So I hope it was helpful for others that are new to it. And again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I don't mind responding at all. Also, Cloudy Nights is a really, really great forum to get on. There's a lot of really great individuals on there that are offering their time for free to answer any question you might have, whatever it might be, silly or not silly. So I don't know all the answers, but I've learned quite a bit in the last almost 2 years of doing astrophotography, and I've had a lot of fun with it. So and it was pure joy and excitement after I found out about the GNTO, especially after it's only 14 miles from my house. I was like, why didn't I know about this sooner? I could have been imaging it like the best place ever, and instead it was in my backyard and dealing with my neighbor's trees. So
Do you have any favorite images that you've taken so far?
Most of the ones that I shared on here, it's tough. There's just so much beautiful stuff, and it's like, trying to find the time to image and really do the image, really do the nebula justice. I do a lot of wide field, and that's one thing I'll say for anybody that's new to this. Don't get crazy and go out and buy like a 1500 millimeter telescope, or a really long focal length telescope. You want to start really wide field. You want to start in your 200 millimeter, 300 millimeter focal ratio range in a telescope, or and keep it as simplistic as possible. I think as you go further out, you need a really good telescope mount to handle the guiding. And there's a lot of cool stuff out there if you're a galaxy guy. I love galaxies. I think they're amazing, but the money to shoot galaxies is not cheap. So on the right equipment, the telescope and the mount alone will set you back, at least $6,000, if not more. So again, it's not a cheap hobby, but it's there's so many objects. It's hard. I couldn't give you an answer on that, Steve. I love them all. My favorite one for sure is the Dragons of Aria, which are out in the southern hemisphere, which we don't get to shoot, unfortunately. But I recently did those on my Astrovan. Dark Sky West, which is a New Mexico place to basically house your telescope. They also have a remote site in Peru, and they offered up all the images for free. So I got to download all the lights and the darks and stuff, and basically compile my own image. Or no, I'm sorry, they only offered just all the images already done. They just gave you a stack of the lights that were already calibrated. So I got to put those together. So that was really fun doing that.
All right, very good. Does anybody else have any other questions for Joey? If not, thank you again.
Yeah,
and
definitely. Thank you.
I think Jim Fordyce might have a special treat for you. We get our speakers a little gift.
Oh, well, all right. I didn't know that.
Joey, will you go ahead and turn off the
Yeah.
speaker? There you go. Thanks.
There you go.
Thanks.
You bet.
So yeah, we have a little thing that we give all our speakers, which is
nice.
TAAS hats. I don't know. Have you bought one of these guys?
I have not bought a hat yet. I've been meaning to get a beanie, but I really want like a face mask, for TAAS, because it's so cold out there with the logo on it. So that would be awesome.
So I'll mail this to you as the.
You got it.
I'll get it in the mail to you.
Awesome. Perfect.
And thanks. It was a great presentation.
Yeah, definitely. I hope it was beneficial for everybody, and I hope somebody, everybody learned a little something, even if astrophotography is not up your alley.
No, it looks really, really interesting. So, all right.